a promise made in the sand. The sky above the desert was red with smoke. Fires burned in the distance. The war had come and gone, leaving nothing behind but dust and silence. In the middle of a broken refugee camp, a small human boy named Micah walked between tents. He was only 7 years old, barefoot, with dirt on his face and a scrap of bread in his pocket. His mother was gone. His father had never come back from the last fight. Micah was alone, but he was used to it now. That morning, as he searched for water, he heard a soft sound behind a broken wall, like someone crying. He stepped closer. There, sitting in the sand, was a girl, but not a human girl. Her skin was light purple, almost glowing in the sun. Her hair was silver and long, falling across her face. Her clothes were torn and her legs were bruised. She was maybe the same age as him, but her eyes looked much older. Micah stared at her. She looked up, startled. He didn't move. She didn't run. After a long moment, he slowly took out the piece of bread from his pocket. Without a word, he broke it in half. He sat down beside her and gave her the bigger piece. She stared at it, then at him, then took it, and ate in silence. They sat there for a long time. The sun rose higher. The camp stayed quiet. Finally, the girl spoke. "My name is Nara." Micah smiled. "I'm Micah." She looked at him. "You're human." "You're not." She nodded slowly. "I'm Vari." He tilted his head. "Is that bad?" She blinked. "The soldiers said we were dangerous." Micah shrugged. "You don't look dangerous, you gave me food," she said. "Aren't you scared?" He thought for a moment, then shook his head. "You looked sad." "That's all." The wind picked up, blowing sand across their feet. Micah pointed at her bruises. "Did someone hurt you?" Nara didn't answer. He looked at her for a long time, then said softly, "Don't worry. When I grow up, I'll marry you. Then no one will be allowed to hurt you." She blinked, surprised. "You'd marry a Vari girl?" Micah nodded. "Why?" "Because you're nice," he said. "And I think you need a friend." She didn't laugh. She didn't cry. She just said, "Okay." Then took off the small pendant around her neck, a broken metal tag with a star symbol. She handed it to him. "Keep this," she said, "if you mean it." Micah held the pendant tightly. "I do." Later that day, rescue ships came. Humans were separated from aliens. Micah was lifted onto a relief transport heading for Earth. He screamed for Nara. She tried to run to him, but a soldier blocked her. Their hands reached out but never touched again. In the years that followed, no one believed Micah's story. An alien girl, at your age? She gave you a pendant? You dreamed it, Micah. But he kept the pendant in his pocket, and every night before sleeping he whispered one line, "Wait for me." And across the galaxy, in a war zone no one visited, a silver-haired girl sat beside a small fire, staring up at the stars, clutching a memory of a promise made in the sand. They were separated by fate, but not by heart. The stars above Earth were beautiful, but to Micah, they always felt empty. He was 10 now. 3 years had passed since the war. And since he was pulled away from Nara, he never stopped thinking about her. Everyone else had forgotten that dusty refugee camp, but he hadn't, because he had made a promise. And to a child like Micah, promises weren't just words. They were everything. Each night, he stared at the metal tag she gave him, the broken pendant with the star mark. He kept it tied around his wrist with a string. It was the last thing he touched before sleeping. He didn't know if she was still alive. He didn't know if she even remembered him. But somehow, deep in his small heart, he believed she hadn't, forgotten, and far away across the galaxy, on a mining world ruined by war, Nara stood barefoot in the ash, lifting heavy crates for a cruel merchant who paid her in scraps. She was thin now, stronger too. Her eyes no longer cried. But at night, when no one was watching, She would take out the tiny cloth pouch hidden under her clothes. Inside it, a small folded drawing, made with crayon on old paper. A stick figure boy and a silver-haired girl, standing hand in hand under a blue sky. At the bottom, written in clumsy letters, "I'll marry you when I grow up." Micah, she smiled when she saw it just a little and whispered, "Not yet, but one day." When Micah turned 15, he joined a pilot training program. Not for war, not for money, but because ships could cross stars, and he had someone to find. His instructors thought he was just another orphan with a dream. They didn't know he flew for love. They didn't know his dream had a name. Back on the mining colony, Nara was now 17. Taller, fiercer, her body carried scars. Her hands were rough, but her heart still soft in one place. She wore no armor, no crown. But every man in the camp feared her quiet strength, because she never bowed, and she never broke. But one night, the merchant's son pushed too far. He tried to take something that didn't belong to him, and Nara fought back. Hard. By morning, she was gone, fled into the wilds with only her pack and a stolen star map, because deep in her mind a boy's voice still lived. "When I grow up, I'll marry you." She had waited long enough, and in the silence of space, in different corners of the galaxy, a boy searched the stars with only a name, and a girl walked toward them carrying only a memory. They didn't know where they'd meet again, but both of them moved forward, because some promises don't fade with time, they grow stronger. He searched the stars, with only a name and a memory. At 17, Micah finally had his own ship. It was old, rusted in places. The engine rattled when it turned. The seats were patched with tape, but to Micah, it was perfect, because it could fly. And flying meant hope. He named it Promise. Every time he stepped into the pilot seat, he touched the pendant tied to his wrist. The same pendant Nara gave him when they were just kids. The world had changed. He had changed. But the memory of her, silver hair, soft eyes, bruised but brave, never left his heart. He didn't even know if she was alive, but still, he searched. Every planet he landed on, he asked the same question. "Do you know a Vari girl named Nara?" Most people just shook their heads, some laughed. "Boy, the galaxy's full of Varis." Others warned him, "If she's out there, she's not the same. Don't waste your time chasing ghosts." But Micah didn't stop. He searched mining colonies, market cities, refugee camps. He worked in shipyards to earn fuel. He slept in his cockpit. A name and a memory. That's all he had. But for him it was enough. On one station, an old alien trader paused when Micah said the name. "Nara, silver-haired girl?" the trader asked. Micah's eyes lit up. "Yes." The trader rubbed his chin. "I remember someone like that. Helped defend a village from pirates on the edge of the Corthus Belt. Silent, strong, like fire in a bottle." Micah's breath caught. "Where was this?" 3 years ago, the man said. "Too long to be sure. But maybe, just maybe." He handed Micah a star map. Micah looked at the coordinates. It was far. A moon on the edge of nowhere. But his heart told him, go. As Micah prepared for the journey, a friend asked, "Why risk so much for one girl?" Micah smiled and said, "Because she believed me when no one else did." Meanwhile, across the stars on that very moon, Nara stood on the roof of a village watchtower. She wore a dark jacket. Her hair was shorter now, but still silver. In her hand she held a small paper drawing, worn, folded many times, but never thrown away. Every time she wanted to stop hoping, she looked at it. Every time she felt alone, she heard a young voice say, "When I grow up, I'll marry you." And she whispered back, "You're late." That night, a ship appeared in the sky, small, old, but flying straight toward her village. Nara narrowed her eyes. She felt something Strange. Something warm. Inside the ship, Micah stared at the landing lights. His hands shook. Was she really here? Was he too late? Had she changed, or worse? Forgotten. But then he looked at the pendant and smiled. He wasn't that scared boy anymore. He was a man who kept his word. He whispered to himself, "I told you I'd come." And the ship touched down in the dust, where a promise once began. The girl he loved became a warrior. Dust rose around the ship as it landed. Micah stepped down slowly, his boots crunching on hard ground. The village ahead was quiet. Stone homes, faded banners, scars from old battles still burned into the walls. But this was the place the traitor spoke of, and something in Micah's chest told him, she's here. A group of Vari villagers came to greet him. They looked tired, cautious. One of them, older and limping, asked, "You lost?" Micah shook his head. "I'm looking for someone." He showed the pendant. "Her name is Nara." At that name, silence fell. Then, slowly, the old man pointed toward the high tower on the edge of the village. "She doesn't talk much anymore," he said, "but she's still watching." Micah walked across the sand, heart pounding. He didn't know what he'd find. Was she angry? Was she different? Had she forgotten? At the top of the tower, Nara stood with her arms crossed. She had seen the ship, and now she saw him. Older, taller, worn by time, but the eyes were the same. She didn't move, didn't speak. She waited. Micah reached the tower base and looked up. "Nara!" he called. No reply. He climbed the steps one by one until he reached the top and stood face to face with the girl who had lived in his memory for 10 long years. She looked at him. He looked at her, and for a moment, time fell away. But she didn't smile. She didn't cry. She simply said, "You came." Micah nodded. "I said I would." There was silence again. Then she turned and walked past him. "Why now?" Micah followed. "I've been searching for you since I could fly." Nara paused. "Why?" He answered softly. "Because I made a promise, and I meant it." She looked back at him. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. "I'm not the girl you remember." "I didn't come for the girl," he said. "I came for you." She led him to her small home. It was simple, clean, filled with handmade tools and weapons. He saw the drawing on her table. Old, cracked, but carefully kept. His hand shook when he touched it. "You kept this?" Nara finally nodded. "I didn't think you'd come," she whispered. "But I wanted to believe." That night they sat under the stars again. No fire, no fear, just two people on opposite sides of time. Finally reunited. Micah looked at her scars, her strength. "You're a warrior now," he said. "I had to be." He smiled gently. "You always were." She looked at him. "What do you want, Micah?" He took a breath and held up the pendant. "I want to finish what I started." Her heart skipped. "And what's that?" He smiled. "I want to keep my promise." They fought side by side, against a common enemy. The next morning, a dark shadow passed over the village. Micah looked up from the courtyard. A black ship hovered in the sky, sleek, fast, and built for war. Nara stepped beside him, her jaw tight. "Slavers," she said coldly. "They raid villages like this. Take the weak. Kill the rest." Micah clenched his fists. "We need to evacuate." "No time," she said. "They're already landing." The villagers panicked. Mothers gathered children. Men grabbed farming tools and blasters from old crates. Micah turned to Nara. "What can I do?" She handed him a plasma knife. "Fight." For the first time, Micah saw what Nara had become. Not just a survivor, not just a warrior, but a leader. She barked orders. "Guard the southern path. Put the elders underground. Watch the rooftops." And they listened, because she had saved them before. And now, she would again. Micah followed her up the ridge as enemy soldiers spilled from the ship. Tall, armored creatures, cold eyes, sharp blades, no mercy. He took a deep breath. "You ready?" he asked. Nara didn't answer. She leapt into battle and he followed. They moved like wind. Micah blocked a strike with his knife. Nara spun low, knocking 2 enemies down with her staff. For every blow he missed, she covered him. For every wound she took, he stood over her. Together, they didn't just survive. They held the line. At one point, a slaver aimed a blaster at Micah's back. Nara threw her blade, hitting the attacker in the neck. He turned, breathing hard. "You saved me." "You're slow," she said. But her smirk gave her away. By nightfall, the black ship burned in the sand. The raiders fled, and the village stood. The people cheered, but Micah only looked at her, covered in dirt, blood, sweat, still standing, still. Strong, he stepped closer. "I knew you were a fighter," he said. She looked at him softly. "You never stopped believing, did you?" "No," he said. "Not once." They sat together that night under the stars. Their bodies ached, their hands were cut, but their hearts were full. Micah pulled something from his pocket. A small silver ring. Simple, worn, but full of meaning. She looked at it, surprised. "You brought that?" He nodded. "I've carried it since I was 10. He didn't kneel. He didn't need to. He just held out his hand and asked, gently, "Will you still have me?" She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just took his hand and whispered, "Always." He asked again, this time with a ring. The village was quiet after the battle. Fires were out, wounds were bandaged, people slept for the first time in peace. But Micah couldn't sleep. He sat on a small hill just beyond the village walls, watching the stars. The silver ring rested in his palm. He had waited years to give it to her. He had crossed systems, fought raiders, slept in cold ship bays, all for one promise. And now, he was afraid. Behind him, Nara approached without a sound. She sat beside him, folding her arms around her knees. "You always did like stargazing," she said. He smiled softly. "I guess I was hoping to see your face up there." She glanced at him, unsure if it was a joke. He wasn't smiling, just remembering. They sat in silence for a while. The stars twinkled. The wind whispered through the grass. Then Micah finally turned to her and said, "I meant what I said. That day in the camp." Nara blinked. "That was a child's promise." He shook his head. "No, it was my truth. I knew, even then, that I never wanted to see you cry again." He held up the ring. It wasn't shiny. It wasn't gold. But it was real, and it had crossed the galaxy to reach her. "I've carried this since I was 10, he said. "I didn't know your world, I didn't know your people, but I knew you." She stared at the ring, her hands trembled just a little. "I don't wear robes," she said. "I don't care. I don't know the words. We'll make new ones." She looked up at him, eyes full of emotion. "I've been alone so long, Micah." He reached out and gently touched her cheek. "Not anymore." She didn't take the ring. She put it on him, slowly, carefully, and said, "You always talk too much." He grinned. "You missed it." She laughed, soft and real. Later that night, the villagers lit lanterns to celebrate their victory. Children danced, old songs were sung, but in a quiet corner near the fields, a human boy, now a man, and an alien girl, now a warrior, stood under the stars and made no promises, because the one that mattered had already been kept. The Wedding of a Human and a Warrior. Written in third person, using simple and emotional English, with a beautiful, satisfying ending that rewards your HFY audience's journey. The sky was bright blue over the village. For the first time in years, there was no smoke, no sound of ships, no running feet. Only music, laughter, peace. In the middle of the village, square people gathered, no royal flags, no fancy uniforms, just friends, elders, children, and the wind. Because today, Micah was keeping his promise and Nara was saying yes. She didn't wear white. She wore deep silver, the color of her people's old banners. Her scars showed, and she didn't cover them. Because this was not a ceremony to hide who she was. It was a celebration of what she had survived and who had stayed with her. Micah wore his flight jacket, the same one he had flown across galaxies in. He had patched it many times, but he didn't replace it, because it had brought him back to her. There was no priest, only an elder woman from the village who stood between them and said, "In our world, we do not ask if love is perfect, we ask if it is true." Nara looked into his eyes. Micah smiled, tears already shining. She said quietly, "I waited." He replied, "So did I." Then they both said, together, "I choose you." The crowd clapped. Someone cried, and a child tossed flower petals into the air, laughing. Nara reached for Micah's hand. He squeezed hers. The old pendant, the one she gave him as a child, still hung from his neck, and now she had tied her own to his. Two broken things, joined together, whole. That night, as the sun set and lanterns rose into the sky, Nara and Micah sat under the same tree where she used to sleep. He leaned back and said, "Remember when I gave you bread?" She smiled. "You gave me your heart too, you just didn't know it yet." He laughed. "I knew." They sat close, no words needed. The galaxy was still full of war, but in this small corner of the stars, a human and an alien had found peace, not in power, not in victory, but in a promise kept.